Yeah.
Ah, awesome. I guess we'll. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the game industry panel. I'm Frederick Descamps. I'm the CEO of Manticore Games. We are the makers of Core, the gaming user-generated multiverse, and I will be your moderator today. So you're in for quite a treat. We have quite an amazing panel of some of the very best world-class movers and shakers of the gaming industry. If you take as a whole their years of experience in gaming, which I did yesterday, you arrive at 122 years of experience in gaming. And with only 18 years of experience in gaming, I'm actually the most junior one of the group. So please join me in welcoming all these great folks. Let me introduce them. I will start with Jens. So Jens Hilgers is the founder and managing partner of Bitcraft VC. Jens joins us from Berlin in Germany. Jens has over 25 years in gaming. I think he started in the mid-90s, and he was the co-founder and CEO of ESL, the Electronic Sports League. So ESL is the oldest and largest esports gaming organization in the world. They started in the mid-90s, if you can believe that. So Jens is not only a serial entrepreneur in gaming, but also an entrepreneur in VC, which is probably one of the hardest industries to start funding. And he started Bitcraft 4 years ago. Jens is probably known for being one of the most active, diversified, and hard-charging gaming investors I know, and probably therefore in the world. And then we go to David Gardner. David Gardner is founder and head of London Venture Partners, one of the most premier and also oldest early-stage gaming funds in the world. He's made investments in Supercell, Unity, Natural Motion, Playfish, and I believe he even invested in one of Jens's previous companies. So before that, David was at EA for 25 years. He actually started EA Europe, believe it or not. He was also the CEO of Atari, I think, for a few years. So lots of European and even French connections here. And last but not least, we welcome Bing Gordon. Bing is currently partner at Kleiner Perkins. Prior to that, Bing was, of course, the co-founder of EA, where he was the chief creative officer, the chief marketing officer, and maybe even at some point the head of studios. Bing was an investor in Zynga, was on the board of director of Amazon, so quite a legendary figure in gaming. And I think Bing has been in gaming since 1980, so probably the longest career to date, right? So let's get started. So we have a few topics we'd like to cover today. I don't know if we'll have time to go over all of them, and we'll start with the first topic, which is gaming in 2020. And I'm going to ask Jens, Bing, and David, what is their view from the top? What is their view on gaming today? And what a year it has been for gaming to date. We've seen major growth on all fronts, not just due to COVID, but in general. Some people say the industry is now as large as $150 billion in revenues. So we've seen incredible growth in absolute and relative numbers in revenues, growth, etc. We have the Unity IPO, we have the Roblox IPO. I mean, Unity is clocking, I think, above $40 billion in valuation. I mean, who could believe that? And Unity was started in Denmark, as you know, Denmark and Iceland. So it seems it's never been a better time to be an investor in gaming. So please, Jens, Bing, David, tell us you saw it all coming. That would be interesting to hear your perspective about this year. Can you share your views on the current state of gaming in general in 2020? Can you unpack your views also on these two massive IPOs event for the year? What is the most surprising success or phenomenon that you've seen in gaming in the last 2 years leading to today? What excites you the most about gaming today? What do you think are the biggest opportunities and challenges? What are the most advanced business models that you've seen in gaming that you think are winning the market? So on and so forth. So what about we start with Jens, who is probably one of the most active investors in gaming today?
That was a lot of questions. Let's just get back to the one that you started with first. So I mean, quite obviously, we had a great year in gaming this year because people kind of had to stay home, and I don't need to kind of repeat all kind of those underlying kind of aspects that brought people in front of the PC or a console, or even a VR device. I think what I feel like has the most profound long-term impact coming out of this year is the sort of imprint of those experiences that they leave behind when you actually had a great time, most likely with other friends or other people that became friends in games that dominantly now are online and collaborative or competitive. And like, I think, so to some extent, like next year when we come out of this crisis, I mean, a lot of people are going to have, fortunately, a lot more things to do than to stay at home. But I think the sort of experiences that were shared and you were going in and through this year with more time available and potentially the first time available at a multiplayer game on your new or existing console or PC, those memories, they stick around and they will keep you kind of as a loyal fan and I think an excited fan of that form of entertainment. So I do believe that this year has accelerated sort of growth of the games industry, and that will not just go away or kind of sink in significantly again in the next years to come. It will stick around. And a lot of the advancements that were made on the technology side and the distribution side this year as a necessity partly, but they sort of all have increased the quality of experiences that we're offering with games, esports, and the sort of interactive entertainment space. So I think overall, it's been an accelerant. I think that's great for all of us. I think it has motivated a lot more investors to come forward and invest in this space. And I do believe it has motivated a lot more people that have been part of a bigger games firm or a firm offering services and products in the space to come forward and actually take a leap of faith because they see there's more capital from smart people out there available. And there is actually right now. So I feel like we have greater and better deal flow and more liquidity in deal flow than ever before as a consequence of that as well.
Great points. David, do you feel, do you have the same feeling? Do you see more interest from your LPs, and in general, what are your views for the state of gaming in 2020?
So yes, look, we're having a great time, and why are we surprised by that? If you're in the games industry, I think that's kind of obvious. For me, the great benefit that we have seen is the smashing of the old taboos. Gaming is now considered good. This is actually, you can't underestimate the power of that mind shift. I think since gaming was invented, everyone who doesn't play games have been worried about the mindlessness of it, or the bad effects of addiction, or just this kind of underlying restraint that I think the widespread benefit and enjoyment that gaming has brought to us, and seeing how gaming has become the platform for carrying on life. So when you go see a concert in a game, when you have friendship experiences, these things are deeply lasting, and that's super great. So I'm definitely very enthusiastic about the fact that we have penetrated. So it depends on your estimate, maybe a third of the population. So if 2 to 3 billion people have played games, but we have far more growth available to us. We're not even at the halfway point yet. So that's super exciting. I think there are some fantastic, meta trends around demographic expansion, girls playing games being the easy way to say that. That's just drawing us into creating, and not only girls playing, but girls building games, is having a wonderfully positive impact on creating other kinds of experiences for people to play. And that's, again, widening the market. So as the devices follow the Moore's law of increasing power and decreasing price, that just means the quality of experience is broadening. We've mentioned briefly some of these IPOs that have happened. That kind of iconic, and everyone wants to create the next unicorn. I remember when Google IPO'd, and everyone would come with a pitch of we're going to be the next Google. Of course, very few were, but it created an amazing positive energy around the attempt to build something. And if you want to, Bing, you may remember the story that Tripp used to always say. I think it's true to say the number one hitter in baseball legend, was Babe Ruth, but Babe Ruth was also the number one in striking out. So it is an incredible need to make an attempt, and we're going to have a lot of failure, but that failure helps us grow and build on things. So I'm super excited about the future.
So Bing, you have the the longest experience in gaming. So are you blasé about the gaming industry, or is 2020 a source of wonderment and excitement for you after all?
David remembers when we wrote the original Electronic Arts business plan, we predicted that one day there would be million unit sellers and that games would be bigger than music and movies. We had no idea it was going to be this big. There was a legendary marketer in Silicon Valley who helped build the brands at Intel and Apple named Regis McKenna. And he said, the way tech works is changes always come more slowly than you expect. And when they work, they're always bigger than you expect. So we're seeing that right now in the games business, in hits and platforms. For any of you, I also get to see enterprise investing, and enterprise SaaS companies, software as a service companies, have been valued at 10 to 20 times current revenue. And what we're seeing in games, especially in the last 5 years, games as a service is once you prove retention, where you can keep your paying customers around for years, you start trading like an enterprise company. So that's why we're seeing things like Spotify and Roblox and Unity trading at much higher multiples than consumer companies usually get. So I put in the notes, it is all about retention. There's kind of the games business has now figured out that retention is the coin of the realm. And I was there for the beginning of social gaming with Zynga, and as Jens and David remember, social really meant viral. They're just so any of you game makers who have friends, games should have mechanisms to make new friends and improve friendships. And I think that's what Jens and David are saying, is that in 2020 lockdown, people turned to games for friendship. I haven't yet seen a company come in with a pitch on games for building friendships who has yet studied dating apps. And so there's still this huge opportunity to take the best of the best in social mechanisms and build a single game around it. And then I got one other old guy wisdom for free for you. David and I have talked about this. So if you're out raising, what I believe is investors should invest in the seed round and the B round, but not the A round. The seed round, you invest in people, and the B round, you invest in traction, and the A round, you invest in kind of somewhere in between. So, go to somebody like David, raise a really big seed round and enough a seed round to get numbers. So your A round should actually look like a B round. And then the next thing is, what you don't want to do is be raising an A round as a game development company, because, unless you're Rob Pardo, because it's just too long of a risk. So what you notice with some great founders is they say they're a game company at seed, and by the time they get to the B round, they're a platform company.
So what are the areas of gaming you're investing in today? What are the ones that you're excited about today, but also when you think 2, 3, 5 years from now would be on the top of these panels, right? If we were to do another panel in 3 to 5 years, maybe do you want to start, David, and then we go to Jens?
Yeah. So look, I talked a little bit about demographic expansion. So I love things that are stretching gaming into, we've had mashups with Match 3 and puzzle games. So what we're really talking about is mashing up customers. What do people who don't think they play games today, what do they enjoy? How do you bring that in? So we invested in Robin Games that Joe Wilson created earlier this year, and she's really trying to redefine how home decoration games work with actual real brands and high quality imagery. And at the end of her success run, I don't know if that's going to be a consumer shopping platform or if it's going to be a user-generated content platform for room designs, or if it's going to feel more like today's traditional game. And I love that. And I think that these things are pushing us, in other directions. And again, I kind of jokingly tell people I don't invest in zombie games anymore. I'm kind of tired of that. I'm investing in cooperative games. I'm investing in things that really build, therefore, community. Bing, your comment about how to build friendships, totally spot on. One of our investments in Denmark is Beta Dwarf, and their pitch line is we want to help build friendships. And for them, it's like older, it's not about kids, it's about people who don't have the eye-hand coordination, so it's slower paced games. So it's what a League of Legends player might be 10 years after they started playing League of Legends. So I love that kind of thoughtfulness around, around that. And, maybe we're going to see some big technology jumps. I'm hopeful that, Apple, there's articles around Apple releasing hardware, whether it's kind of augmented reality glasses or things like that. Maybe there will be some quality hardware that allows us to create other kinds of experiences, but that is going to be, much longer term. So I'll leave those out there for now and let the others jump in.
Got it. So Jens, I mean, you're by far one of the most investors in gaming. It's pretty crazy. Every week you seem to invest in a new company, and I always look at them and I'm like, wow, you're covering the whole spectrum of the ecosystem, from esports to tools to online services, gaming studios. It's pretty incredible and very exciting. So can you tell us like kind of your investment philosophy, how you're looking at 2020 and beyond for Bitcraft?
Well, I don't think anything changed really in 2020 with how we looked at sort of what we would like to invest in. We fundamentally believe here is sort of when we look at games and like I originally came more of sort of from an esports focus, but I think the larger theme that we think of and look at is what we for ourselves defined as synthetic reality, which is sort of this larger paradigm change or way that I think we see particularly younger audiences that grow up with digital devices and grow up with digital communication and grow up with sort of spending kind of their social time to a big extent in virtual realities, that these generations sort of don't see a line anymore between the virtual world, the simulated reality, if you want so, and the physical and analog reality that's out here, that's surrounding us. And while for the generations like my parents, that line is very real and it's a very distinct act to kind of entrench yourself, immerse yourself into a potential video game experience. For the younger generations, there's a seamless sort of transition between those two kind of realities. And that brings, and esports was one of these, I'd say, beautiful examples and phenomena that showed this in a very strong way. And we believe that what we see right now on a game IP like Fortnite kind of takes that forward to a whole new level, right? And when we look at that, it as like virtual realities, which dominantly are video games and video game technology, are increasingly taking a part of your everyday life, not only entertainment, but of course also entertainment, then a lot of interesting things come forward. And we believe the video games industry is at the forefront of driving that. And I think that's at large what we're investing in. So video games IP is a big part of that. And David touched on a couple of really important, interesting parts. I think in video games itself, you can go today, as the industry is so large and growing across all the platforms, which is like we've never had growth on kind of the console, which was written off like 3 times in my and David's and Bing's lifetime, like the PC, which was called dead for like how many times already, right? Like we have mobile, which is still growing in retention and games in print. And now VR being a platform that actually has feasibility to building a business on, and all of them are growing still. So you can actually, at a scale of audience like this, you can actually go very narrow and very deep with the game's IP. You can just do something and drill down very deep, but you can also start to go extremely large with cross-platformness, deeply social design, and kind of what we would look at as the metaverse, right? And all of a sudden there is something much larger that to quite a big extent you're tackling with Manticore, and that's the reason why obviously we invested in, I don't know, 4 or 5 of your financing rounds. I would just want to say all of them. So the and that's the whole other side of that equation. But then there's kind of, I think, SaaS in gaming, kind of supporting software for companies that build assets in gaming and interactive entertainment. I think for quite some time that was a difficult kind of part to a difficult segment to invest in. But again, as this industry is at this scale, and more often than not, technology that is incarnated in video games makes its way outside of the core video games industry. Just look at Mandalorian. What is that? Half the production done with the support of the Unreal Engine, right? Like, just one of many examples of how video games technology all of a sudden transcends and outside of the games industry and finds a much larger and additional TAM. I think investing in sort of technology, horizontal technology is what we call that, because it scales outside of the games industry, is actually interesting and is a big part of what we do. So again, at the scale, the imprint and relevance through video games become pop culture and defining so much of our life in between us, our friends, and other people. There's so many opportunities to look at. That's why we are actually, I'd say, fairly fast in that belief of how things are moving forward right now. And I think deploying money across a lot of different things, and only about 30% of them are actually direct game studio or kind of developer investments.
I have to say that Jens on Beatcraft have been one of the most not just reactive, but fast to decision VCs I've ever seen. Even the last time, I'll share this anecdote. We were closing a specific round with big company, and I sent Jens an email saying, "Hey, we room," and within 10 minutes, he's like, "Yep, I mean, please count us in. No need for a call. Let's go." That's just pretty.
Well, but that's a function of rule number 1 of investing. Always invest in the best people. I mean, then it doesn't matter if that's like whatever you sent me. I mean, but we'll talk about like who do you?
Oh, I'm blushing now. Thank you. So Bing, if I give you $1 billion today to invest in gaming, where would you put it?
Let's see. I'd put $50 million into London Venture Partners and David Gardner. Because basically, if you can get 20-25% return on investment, you double every 2.5 to 3 years. I'd put money into Amazon. We did put money into Epic. I kind of think, to Jens's point, right now there's one game company valued at over $100 billion, and I think there's going to be 7 in kind of 5 to 10 years. I think Epic's going to be one of them. Looks like Unity has a chance to be one. Tencent is one so far. I'm shocked that nobody has, tried to buy Nintendo at double their market cap. It would have been a much better idea 4 or 5 years ago, before it became obvious that Nintendo properties could be as valuable on mobile. And then, there's some other investors like Jens who are deeply embedded in games, and I think the best way to invest in the games industry is to invest both early and invest in proven platforms. So early, there's about 5 great investors who just see everything in gaming. So, you'd probably you'd want to power as much money into the great gaming early stage VCs as you can. But they all, Jens and David, don't want to take too much money. So you'd have to take them out to dinner and convince them to take money.
So I think to just expand, sorry, I don't want to cut you there. I think when you talk about the fascinating statement about like the $100 billion company, but I think when you just draw the line on the continued growth in the games industry and the market size, and you look forward 10 years, I don't think it's unrealistic to say that we'll be the first $1 trillion entertainment industry with the games industry, and it doesn't take much to get there. And that's a very exciting prospect, I think. And just underlying what you just said, just through a different lens, right?
Got a question?
It's just a confirmation amongst believers.
Yeah, it's really clear that in about 04, I started thinking about the entertainment business not as dollars, but as hours. And it was really clear even in 04 that the game business, the number one property for hours was World of Warcraft. It wasn't the number one property for money. It's been game makers have been great at creating time, and game business people have been shitty at turning time into money. So in the mobile freemium business in 2010-11, mobile made about 2.5 cents an hour. And now it's more like 15 to 17 cents an hour, which matches US cable TV. So the game business people have started to get their act together and be as good as the game makers in creating time. It's very similar to what's going on in digital advertising. Mary Meeker in her internet report pointed out that hours on the internet monetize in advertising. It's something like 10% of the hours of TV. And the US primetime TV monetized at $1 an hour, which is where packaged goods games were for a long time. And guess what? 2020 is also the year of digital advertising and mobile and the internet starting to approach and surpass TV with brand advertising coming to digital. So we've been the biggest industry in hours for several years. So I agree with you on the business people in games start making 20 to 25 cents an hour. We are going to be the by far the biggest industry in entertainment.
And I don't know if I go randomly off board here, but I think it's so fascinating to see when you look at the battle for the app stores and app store fees. I think sort of games open up more than just sort of an entertainment session. They open an entire, basically virtual engine on your smartphone, right? Because games, and you see that on Manticore and on Epic Games and on what Fortnite does and with the Unreal Engine, like it is basically a virtual shell that opens up in your smartphone, and that shell will drive various different forms of entertainment and sell them in that virtual shell that you opened up, as well as sort of transact on multiple other kind of items that you wouldn't associate with a game to begin with. But that's what we see happening right now with the larger games. And I think we're getting to a point where the platform providers are starting to realize that that's actually a gateway in a simulated reality, a digital economy, that you don't just want to kind of have people get into that space and not take any toll at all. I think the significance of what's opening up with what is often referred as the metaverse has just been realized. And I truly hope that sort of the outcome of what Tim Sweeney and Epic Games are doing is showing quite soon.
Just to build on that, interestingly, if you pay attention to economists are kind of the modern Nostradamus. They're really smart, they sound great, and they're always wrong. They're kind of no better than a coin flip, except in virtual worlds. The economists in virtual worlds where assets are free have a lot more experimentation, and so economists in virtual worlds are actually pretty good.
Any of these excellent economists specialized in virtual worlds, we are takers, because that's basically in large part what we're doing, right? Like creating this the creators and the players, and bringing a new wave of creators in ways that haven't been seen before. Okay, so we got some good questions already. So there is someone named Patrick who is asking, I don't know who that is. Patrick Buchner is actually our CMO. He's asking, how about the future of the old dogs? EA, Activision, Ubisoft, right? And these companies are, to say it candidly, they are tremendously slow. They don't innovate as much as, of course, a company like Manticore. So where do you see them going? Like they are more and more like the old guard, like making the same big budget games, etc. Where do you see them investing? Where do you see them going in the next 5 to 10 years? Besides maybe M&A, or M&A can be part of it. What do you think being?
Oh, sorry, I was just looking up a link. But what do I think about the old dogs? I answered Beekner in the chat thread that I quoted Jeff Bezos, who distinguishes day one companies from day two companies. So interestingly enough, some of the incumbents like Google and Facebook and Amazon have been unafraid to break something that's working to get to something that's better. But they're still we're still founder led for their great years, and they tend to focus on long-term enterprise value and long-term free cash flow instead of quarterly optimization. Professional managers tend to get rewarded for professional optimization. So once you get to a company where you're managing for the short term, that tends to be the enemy of innovation.
Your ex-employer, David, Ubisoft, EA, Activision.
Look, I think at many levels they're great. I mean, you see some of the the products that are coming out. Playing FIFA, and it's just continued the trajectory of it. Sometimes it's more and more difficult to discern: is this real television? Is this real live football? Is it when I watch my 14-year-old playing, I'm not sure if it's a live match or if it's a FIFA. But so there's a lot of great stuff. But the reality and Bing helped solve and invent one of the massive trends in the industry, which is EA is addicted to franchises because it has to meet its earnings targets consistently. And that treadmill exists pretty much with all the giants. And therefore innovation has shifted into, fortunately, I mean, I'm in the innovation space. I'm funding things that are going to shake things up or break things up and do it differently, and then quite possibly get acquired by that list of old companies. It's kind of the ecosystem and recycling. And so, we often, one of our favorite investment philosophies is to find teams that are highly experienced at the big companies. And so they're excellent at the game design and engineering and delivery process, but they're not necessarily familiar with how you set something up and get it funded and kind of do the launch of a new company. And that's where we will bring our expertise to bear to partner with them to build these new ideas. Because a team that's been doing something at Riot, League of Legends for 5 years, they're probably ready for a new experience, and they have to find that outside.
Yeah, as an aside, David, thinking about the acquirers, what's so interesting to me is that technology companies as acquirers tend to be acquisitive when their stock is high, and old industry is acquisitive when the stock is low. And so that acquiring when the stock is high is just another example of the founder-led tech companies who are very lean forward on taking risks. So, General Motors wouldn't have done a WhatsApp when things were going great. They do a cruise when things look terrible. So if you're
they need to be under pressure to innovate, in other words. Yeah, I take cash from the old school buyers and I take stock from the new school buyers.
It's like a smart trade-off. There is a great question, a bit self-serving, but here we are. Manticore is in the zeitgeist, from Sarah Brenzel, whom we all know from Zynga. And I think she's at Roblox now. So she says, interesting to hear ideas, less top-down and more bottoms-up, quicker to market, allow for wider spectrum of interactions, role-playing, and also enable meaningful social discovery. And well, that's exactly what Manticore is doing with Score, and in some ways also Roblox. So what do you folks think about that? I mean, in some ways, games are still made vastly in the what I consider now the old way, which for most companies is the current way, with very rigid pipelines involving sometimes a dozen tools that needs to be integrated, large teams, ultra specialists that don't touch anything besides their specialty, and therefore they take longer. They are harder to modify before going to market, let alone when you're in market. So how do you see that changing? Obviously, it's a little self-serving, but here we are. What do you think, Jens?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure I understand that question entirely right. Interested to hear ideas for how games can be less top-down, allow for wider spectrum of interaction and role-playing, and also enable meaningful social discovery. Maybe I'm just qualified as not entirely bright, but I'm not entirely getting the question.
I think what she's saying is, and again, that's the core pun of what we're doing at Manticore, which is, today games are very top down. You have a group of folks coming together, then they make a game.
You should answer it.
Yeah, well, I guess I did. I guess I did, right? I know I can answer it. I mean, I came up with the idea for Core, which was partly top down and partly bottom up in itself. So, we were originally a game studio. We wanted to make a new generation of real-time multiplayer PvP games. And then we're like, not just because it's cool, but also to abstract ourselves from the vagaries of the hit-driven business model. When you make a game for a few years, you launch it, you're like, oh, shoot, 90% of games are commercial failures, not creative failures, but commercial failures. Therefore, 90% of studios are always looking for money or going bankrupt. Or like, hey, what about we create an ecosystem where we can very quickly, for ourselves at first, very quickly modify the games on all levels, the rule set, the maps, the content, etc., like extremely fast. So we need the very best tools in gaming, which, as you know, for having worked at gaming companies, is actually very rare. The tools are either the ones that you acquire commercially or rent commercially and are very rigid, or the ones you build, which are typically can be used only by 2 people on your team. So we said, no, let's invest in easy to use tools, right? And then we're like, okay, let's also have de facto a modding community, because that's what we believe in. Like, we should open our games to the gaming community, the modding community. And we're like, well, therefore we need to productize all our tools, meaning making sure that the tools are not just usable by everybody on our team, but also by everybody in the world. And we're like, hey, let's not stop there. Let's create also an economy where people can make money. The modders today cannot make money. They receive sometimes cease and desist letters by the developers and publishers. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh shoot, this is not a game studio anymore. This is the multiverse, right? So that's where we ended up having now people on the platform who had until last week, for instance, no gaming experience at all. We have people who are, 14, 15 and are coming to gaming thanks to Core, making games and becoming top creators on the platform within sometimes 2 weeks. We have moms of 4. We have retirees who had never touched a computer before and got a computer for their retirement, started playing games, and now they are top creators in Core. And that's, I think, what she's talking about, this kind of new phenomenon, which we've seen with Twitch and YouTube, this immediacy of interaction between the creators, which can be video makers or streamers. And now we're bringing that to gaming. So sorry, I took over the panel.
Good. That's good.
Good. Thank you so much. That's why I invested in you to begin with, Frederick.
Okay, so I don't know how much more time we have, but I have like another many pages of questions. But
Caroline said 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes. Okay, so maybe we can finish on a more personal questions. What are the games that you're playing today? The games and services you're playing using besides Core, of course. Like, I'll take the compliment again. But like, what are the games that you're playing? What are your all-time favorite games? Maybe we can start with Bing.
My number one game of all time is World of Warcraft. I got into the games business with the vision of virtual worlds from the original Westworld movie. My number 2 is Diablo, and I've been playing Diablo seasons kind of every day for the last couple of years. My favorite games are usually games that somebody else built.
I can jump in. I've got a couple of favorites for different reasons. There's one of EA's first ever published games was called Archon, And I used to play that with Trip, and I don't know why. I mean, maybe because I could beat him, I really enjoyed it. But it was fun because it had a chess-like high-level strategy, and then you had to have sort of character-to-character combat to win each move. And I don't know. I still love that game. But much more recently, I had such a positive emotional experience playing some of the Lego Star Wars games. Because of the cooperative nature and how I could play, kind of with my kids, and they had such insight into humor, and it was just kind and fun, and it was really really touched by that. And then more recently, lots and lots of mobile things, but those are kind of quick things and sort of looking at portfolio of new products and that's also great because I love the fast-paced nature, and it doesn't take hours.
So no Supercell games, huh? Interesting.
Well, that's in the mobile category, but yeah, I should. I don't own any Supercell stock anymore, so it's a shame.
What about you, Jens? What are the top games of all time?
Today is simple. I think the answer is Brawl Stars, and that's I've never thought that I would play an esports game, and I think I would call it one of the best esports games on mobile, on a mobile phone. And the reason is just that, I got two kids here, and one of them you just saw 5 minutes ago. But I don't have the kind of hour anymore to just update the whole machine. I kind of play League of Legends and kind of let me sink into that, and kind of my competitive nature forbids me to kind of just play one game and believe that I get something out of it. So Brawl Stars is different. I get 3-minute matches. I can quickly get in and out. It's a competitive experience. It's pretty good skill build up still. So it's an amazing game, just all around well built. And like the games that inspired, I think Elite was one of the games that, like, open world game that kind of really inspired me. Defender of the Crown, Command & Conquer was a big one for me. Populous was a mind-blowing game for me. Quake was one that really changed my life. I think so a lot of these games that really kind of showed me the diversity in gaming was C64 and Amiga. That was the games that kind of, I think, had the biggest imprint on me.
Many.
I think Populous invented the God game category.
Yeah.
Yep. It was such an amazing IP.
Yeah. It would be. Oh, I guess. What happened to the screen?
The interesting thing about Populous